Okay.
And I'm not sure if we're live yet. It does say we are live on YouTube, and I see us there. So I'm just going to switch back and forth from time to time to make sure it's working.
Okay.
Here. And thank you for those of you joining us today. Today, I have my very good friend, Doug Kelly, someone who I've been honored to know for 5 years. He actually mentored me on my first speech that I gave and got paid for. So he's monumental in helping me become a professional speaker, or someone who gets paid for speaking. And he's just an all-around good guy. He's very good at public speaking, engaging. He's smart, has a lot of wisdom. So today, we're going to be talking about a few topics. We're going to be talking about public speaking, the keys to being an effective public speaker, because Doug has been speaking or public speaking for more than 50 years, and he's been a member of Toastmasters for, I believe, 51 years. So we'll talk about that. Going to talk about personal development and keys to growth. And finally, entrepreneurship, because Doug has built businesses from nothing, from scratch, from the ground up, and that still exists today. So I think it's important that we touch on that topic. Thank you very much for joining me, Doug. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, thank you, Joseph. And how about yourself?
I am doing really well. I'm having a good day.
So good days are good, especially in this year.
Yeah, especially in this crazy year that we've been in. We actually did this interview already, correct?
We did?
We did.
Oh.
And I messed it up because I wasn't live streaming. And so, yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later, because I think how you deal with failure is important. That's something I want to talk about today that we didn't talk about last time. But let's start with public speaking. You've been in Toastmasters for 50 years, more than 50 years. What started that journey of joining Toastmasters? How did you find Toastmasters, and what led to you sticking with it for so long?
Well, I didn't know what Toastmasters was. Never heard of it, or I think I may have heard of it, but I certainly never registered that was something I ever wanted to do. And I was living in Japan. I was working in Japan, actually. It was 1969. I'd been there for a few years and was working in and out of Japan. Anyway, I was in the intelligence business, and every morning at 9 o'clock, which is in Japan, 9 o'clock in the morning is what we call Zero Zulu. That's so everybody, all the military people get on the same time clock. They have what they call Zulu time, which comes out of England. And so 9 o'clock in the morning in Japan was Zero Zulu, and every morning at 9 o'clock we would meet all the high mucky muck generals and people, and we would get the intelligence briefing every day. And there was a guy there that I really admired. He was a good-looking guy. He always dressed nicely. Well, we all dressed nicely. We all had our clothes tailor-made, and so that was not a deal. But he was especially well done, well dressed. Yeah. He had a knockout, fall over dead, gorgeous wife who was really a neat gal. Wow. And I really admired. I was single at the time, and I really admired that. And it was just everything about him I really liked. And so today we would call that a man crush, I think. So I summoned up the courage one day to just ask him. I said, "Hey, what do you do? What do you have?" I said, I admire and respect you just for the way you dress, for your wife, for the way you conduct yourself in the briefings and everything I see you do. I just really admire that. Yeah. How do you do that? What do you do? What's something I can copy? Because I want to be more like you." Yeah. And so he just said, "Well, what are you doing Tuesday night?" And I said, "Nothing." And so he said, "Well, come with me Tuesday night. I'll take you to a meeting that you'll enjoy." And that was my first Toastmasters meeting.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got started, quite literally, because I liked this guy and he took me to a meeting. I had no intention of ever speaking or doing anything with it. I just showed up one day when I was invited, and it worked out. And it's been working out for.
That's awesome.
Actually, that was 1969. Vietnam was a big business.
1969.
Yeah.
Back in Japan. And what do you remember from your first meeting? Was your friend there, the friend that you admired? And what do you remember from that first meeting that you had at Toastmasters?
Well, I don't remember anything about the first meeting, really, other than going there and meeting some guys and hearing some guys talk and not understanding what was going on or who was what. And I knew that I knew a term president, I knew what that was, and I knew what a vice president was, sort of. And so,
Yeah.
I just it didn't mean anything to me other than the fact that I was there, and it looked like they were enjoying themselves, and it was a good time. It was a fun event, and we had a lot of laughs, and but I didn't understand it. I was just too unused to it.
Yeah. And then you decided to come back, right, to Toastmasters. So what went into that decision to come back? Yeah.
But I figured, what the heck, he brought me here because I asked him, what do I need to do to get better? At whatever. I didn't know about the art form of communications in those days. So I just said, well, I might as well join and see. It was inexpensive. I don't remember how much it was, but it was not very much money. It was maybe $25 or something for a year. And yeah, and I joined, and it wasn't until I guess the second or the first meeting that I was a member that I had joined the club, and they vote on you and they do all the stuff. Anyway, they voted me into the club, and so of course they will and always have and always will. The first meeting that you're a member, you get called upon for a thing called table topics.
Yeah.
And table topics in Toastmaster it's a 2-minute impromptu speech. That's it. You're given a subject at the will of the topics master, table topics master. They will pick up. I should say he, because Toastmasters was only for men in those days.
Yeah.
But women were brought into the organization in 1973, but we were all men. So he, the topic master, would ask a question, and it could be anything. And I remember he asked me some question about some country I'd never heard of, and something that happened there that I could care less about.
Yeah.
I certainly had no knowledge of it, but he asked me to comment on that, and I don't remember a thing that I said. Yeah. I got up to the lectern, and I was there, and I saw the lights, because I understood that the lights would tell you when your time is up. Mm-hmm. And the lights said my time was up, and I said thank you or something, and went and sat down in a puddle of sweat. Wow. Couldn't tell you one word I said, couldn't tell you one thought I had. I was just one frozen puppy. And yeah, it was bad. And then it only got worse when I did my first speech, called an icebreaker, the very first speech. And I did that. I said the same thing. Sat down in a puddle of sweat. Don't know what I said.
You don't even remember what you said. That's funny.
No.
And so I've been in Toastmasters 5 years. I know you've been there a little bit longer. And I know sometimes people won't stick with it, especially, if they had an uncomfortable experience. Like sometimes if things are uncomfortable with people, they just don't stick with it. What got you coming back? Like, even though being nervous and you gave a speech and you don't remember what it was, you were very nervous. What kept you coming back to Toastmasters all those years?
A couple things, actually. I found out that I had a speech impediment that I never knew I had.
Oh.
Been there all my life. And so they honed in on that in my icebreaker, and we started working on that. It took me 5 years to get through that. And what was happening during that 5 years was every time I would get up and give a speech, we have what we call speech evaluators, someone who will come in and evaluate your talk and tell you give you some pointers on how to improve it. And it's not critique. It's not that was a terrible speech. No, it's nothing like that. It's if you want to add some power, want to add some impact to your speech, you might try this or that. And they actually make good suggestions that will help us. Well, my evaluators for the first 5 years I was in Toastmasters, the first words out of their mouth were, Doug, slow down.
Yeah.
And I said that I had a speech impediment. I slurred my words. And I have a quick mind. And so having a quick mind, it doesn't like to wait for my mouth.
Yeah.
And so before I could get my words out, my mind would go to the next sentence and would say, oh, enough of that one. Let's go on to this next. And so I would cut off mid-sentence and go to the next sentence. It made it really hard for people to understand what I was saying, to catch on. And after I figured that out, learned about it, I asked people, how much of what I say can you really understand? They say, about a third.
Yeah.
Oh, Well, gee, nobody had ever said anything to me about that. Teachers in school, nobody. But I
Yeah.
was just a really, rapid fire talker. And I still fall into that once in a while. Like
Yeah.
if I'm really passionate or emotional about something, I'll get into it and just speed right up and start chopping off those words and sentences again.
Yeah.
So it never goes away, but I am more conscious about it. So I hear it and
Yeah.
slow down.
Very good. And so on that note, I mean, talking about improvement, so it's obvious it really helped you with overcoming that speech impediment to where you can't tell unless, you're just super passionate about something, in which case it might help a little bit to be very fast speaking about it.
Well, that's what happens when you're
Yeah.
excited about something in a natural way, and you see it every day. When somebody's excited about something, their speech rate goes up,
Yeah.
their tone of their voice goes up, everything goes up. And it's like it takes some people are I know people who do speak rapidly. They're really fast talkers and they're
Yeah.
really clear. You can understand every word they say. Not me. I'm not one of them. I have to consciously slow down in order to make myself understood.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing actually, because it forces me to be present in my presentation, because I have to be here. I have to be aware of exactly what I'm doing. And that's always a good thing when you're doing a presentation.
Definitely to be in the moment.
Yes.
And what advice would you give for someone who had a similar issue where they were being told to slow down because they're hard to understand? What advice would you give them since you've overcame that?
What advice?
What advice would you give someone who is having that same struggle of having to slow down when they're speaking?
Uh-huh.
Because they're slurring their words. What advice would you give someone who has a similar
Oh,
type?
I'd say same thing I did. I would just say, well, this is a life lesson now.
Yeah.
It's about overcoming things in life.
Yeah.
If you're struggling with something, here's how you can overcome it. And it works 100% of the time. Is don't beat yourself up about it. Don't make it wrong. What happens when you make yourself wrong, when you start beating yourself up because, oh, I keep doing that, whether it's smoking a cigarette or whether it's, slurring your words or cursing or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If there's something that you're wanting to not do and you say, doggone, I'm doing it again. When you do that, what that does, that just adds resistance. It adds energy to it. And this is my example of energy. If I'm pushing my two fists together, okay, and I'm pushing and pushing with both sides, I'm just pushing and pushing. And when I do that, what happens? Well, I just got a lot of energy, but nothing's happening really. We're not getting anywhere. But what would happen if you did this rather than doing arguing with it? If you just do this, take one and then go with it.
Yeah.
Go with the flow, as they say.
Yeah.
When you do that, that takes all the energy out of it. And when you take the energy out of it, well, there's no longer any resistance. There's no longer any energy there on it.
Yeah.
And it can naturally disappear, and it will. So every time you catch yourself doing whatever that was, just say, oh, here I am. Here I am wanting a cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time you get that thought through your head, here I am wanting a cigarette, you don't have that urge for the cigarette anymore. It just goes away.
Yeah.
And you don't make yourself wrong about it. Oh, God, this is the 14th time I've tried to quit and I'm a failure. I'm a loser. No, it doesn't do you a bit of good to do that. And so that's the way. That's a life lesson thing. And that's what I finally figured out to do with my speaking. Was when I noticed I was speaking too rapidly, I would say, in my mind, I would say, Doug, slow down.
Doug, slow down.
And no energy on it, just Doug, slow down. And not make it wrong, not go to loggerheads about it, just Doug, slow down. And then every now and then I noticed that I did a speech and nobody told me to slow down, and they seemed to understand it, and they laughed at the right places, or they reacted as I would hope that they would react, and so they were getting it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd say, oh, thank you, good job. I acknowledge to myself the gratitude. Very, very important to acknowledge when you catch yourself doing something good. That by the way, that line comes right out of the 1 Minute Manager from years and years and years ago. but it was a book called 1 Minute Manager, and that's one, catch him doing something right.
The 1 Minute Manager. Okay.
Yeah. That was a book that was out, I don't know what years, maybe the 70s. It was during all the self-help years, which were the 70s, 60s and 70s, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just catch yourself doing something right, acknowledge it, thank yourself for doing it, and move on. Next.
Don't give energy to the bad stuff and look for the good stuff and celebrate it. Enjoy life. Basically, there's a lot of life lessons in there that extend from the public speaking, which is cool.
Well, I don't know what extends from what. I just know that, these are life lessons, and they help with getting along.
Very good. And so in 51 years of being in Toastmasters, I'm sure you've seen some amazing success stories. Who's the first person who comes to mind?
Bill Sleeper.
Who?
Bill Sleeper.
Who is that?
Bill Sleeper was an accountant, or he is. Well, if he's still alive, he's about my age. He should be alive. He was a healthy guy. Anyway, Bill was an accountant. He was a CPA working for a large accounting firm in Hawaii, and he joined Toastmasters. And it was funny what he said about Toastmasters when he was doing his swan song, leaving the club to move to the mainland, to take on full partnership in another accounting firm. It was a big deal. During his tenure in Toastmasters, he was there probably, I don't know what, 10 years maybe. But he kept getting promoted. And he blamed Toastmasters. He said, that darn Toastmasters, he keeps getting me promoted in my job. And he was a full partner, he became a full named partner in the accounting firm that he was with. And then he got this, this offer he couldn't refuse from the mainland. And so off he went. But anyway, he said, when I first came to Toastmasters, I dreaded being called. I dreaded coming to a meeting and not having an assignment, because I knew for sure that I'd be called upon for table topics.
Yeah.
And I hated that, because, oh man, to get up and just do an impromptu speech, 2 minutes without any thought or practice or things, I just couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And he says, now as I'm leaving you and moving on to my next career in life, or my next opportunity here, he says, I have to tell you, I hate coming to a meeting when I have an assignment, because I know if I have an assignment, I won't be called on for table topics. And I've come to love table topics because they keep me sharp. And so that's it in a nutshell. That's something that comes out of that. It's one of those asides. It's one of those things that happens when you didn't mean anything to happen, but it happened anyway.
Yeah.
And he, like I say, he grew huge ways.
Yeah. What was he like when he first started versus what he was like when you last saw him speak?
Oh, he was shy. He was exactly, if you could imagine a cartoon of an accountant, he would be that character. He was shy. He was introverted. He was just wouldn't have anything to do with anybody. He wouldn't squeak unless you poked him.
Yeah.
And it was awful. It was painful to watch him get up and give a speech, because he was just so withdrawn. And he became gregarious and outspoken and genuinely funny. The guy had a great sense of humor that he never would show it in the beginning. And as he developed and gained more self-confidence, which is, oh, by the way, the other thing Toastmasters does, is as he gained his self-confidence and his self-esteem went up, he let that humor out. And the guy was really funny. And so, and could be, but he knew how to use it.
Yeah.
And you learn the appropriateness of communications.
Very cool. It sounds like he found his voice basically through Toastmasters.
Oh, that's very good. Yes, he found his voice. It's funny you should say that. Well, that's why people go to Toastmasters. That's the reason we tell them they should come, is you'll find your voice here. I say you'll find yourself here. Yeah. Because you can't get up and talk to an audience without revealing yourself.
Yeah.
And the willingness to be that vulnerable, the willingness to get up there and show your bad side in a safe environment, which is, that's what Toastmasters is. It's a safe environment. You're not going to get slammed for anything you do, unless you do something really untoward. Yeah. But it's something that as we develop, we become more familiar with ourselves. Oscar Wilde has a saying that I love, and that is, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
Wow.
And so when you think about that, you know, everyone is a part of the puzzle. We all have a job here on this planet. And so when we are being our authentic, genuine self, well, then we're doing what we're meant to do. We're doing what we were meant to do here. And so by being able to express ourselves and communicate clearly,
Yeah.
it enables us and the people we're communicating with to have more fun, to have a lot
Yeah.
less issues in life, and to get the job done, whatever that job is.
Very good. What their gift is, use that gift. And just for those joining us now, I want to make sure I describe what Toastmasters is, because sometimes you hear that, you think it's a drinking club, you think it's a toaster. I've heard before, a Toastmaster toaster.
Ah, yes, yeah.
A public speaking group, and what really it's an organization where we get together to help each other improve our public speaking and leadership skills.
Yes.
And it's helped both of us. It's helped me. You saw my first speech. I don't know if you saw it, Doug, but I was hemming and hawing the whole time. A lot of uhs and ums, and I think it's really transformed my speaking.
You were very bashful.
Yeah.
I do remember when you started, and you have, so you too have discovered that humor.
Oh yeah.
That you have, the natural humor, and people love that. And when you get up, and nowadays you give speeches that people actually look forward to hearing.
Yeah.
Back in the early days, and that's true of most people when they come into Toastmasters. They get up and they'll do a speech, and they're so into looking good.
Yeah.
You know, there's this thing about people that when they're in an unfamiliar situation, they've always got to shine. They've always got to be the best or look the best. And I have a mantra that I use in Toastmasters and everywhere else, and that is, be interested, not interesting.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, we all try to be interesting. We all try to say something that's brilliant, and we try to do things that will have you pay attention to me, and I want to make sure that you understand what I'm saying, and so I'm going to pound it in, or whatever we think we need to do, really, to survive in front of that audience. And at some point, we will discover that, I call it, that we can see the audience. There's something that happens with about every Toastmaster who I've seen, who started and progressed. It's happened to every single one of them, and that is that there's a point. I usually will send them a note. We'll say, "Welcome out." They don't know what it means, but I do. And when I say welcome out, what I mean is that you finally got out of your body. You finally got out of your head, and now you came out and you saw the audience. I mean, you can see that in a speaker. So when they see the audience, and for the first time, it's kind of shocking to them, because when they're in the middle of a speech, and all of a sudden something is different here.
Yeah.
And it's because they're recognizing the audience. Not that they know Bob and Sally and George and Sue. It's that they're recognizing the energy in the room, and they know that, oh, I'm the one who has control of the energy here. And wow, I can do this and raise it. I can do that and lower it. I can do things that will actually have an effect here.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And I said, be interested, not interesting. And so when you start getting interested in that, what happens is that ego thing goes away.
Yeah.
And you begin to genuinely communicate with your audience. Some people never get there because they're just too, I don't know what, hardwired or something, but most people do come through, and they will actually recognize, you do it, you recognize the audience now. And I don't know, and it doesn't take a long time. I usually give it 4 or 5 speeches, and they'll have a breakthrough.
Yeah.
And some people it's longer, some people it's quicker, but yeah. And it's really neat when they can finally get out of their head and get into the heart of what it is they're there to do, to improve the speaking, but also to communicate, to genuinely communicate with an audience in a way that they get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I know when I first started, guilty, I was thinking, I want people to think I'm smart. I want people to think I'm cool. I remember
Yeah.
that was what I was thinking when I was first speaking. Um, do
We
you
all
remember?
do that. So,
Yeah, yeah, I think it's normal. But
mhm.
do you remember like a time when you overcame that, when you had a breakthrough? Was there like an epiphany, or is there a memorable speech that you remember when someone had that breakthrough and you were just like, wow, this is awesome? Um, has that ever occurred?
Yeah, I mean, it still does, but I'm trying to think recently if I've seen anybody go through. See, with this COVID thing going on,
Yeah,
we haven't been having a lot of new members in the
yeah.
club. So the opportunity for this year has not presented itself for us to genuinely see somebody just starting out.
Mhm.
I'm not drawing up anyone right now that came through it. It's not a big deal. I just see it and I go, wow, oh good, they did.
Yeah,
Welcome. I'm good on them, and
welcome.
I'm glad to see that when it happens.
Okay, understood. And out of all the speeches you've seen over, 51 years, what is the best speech you've ever seen through Toastmasters? The best speech or the most memorable one?
Well, the most memorable one, that's okay. In 1990, we had a fellow from Austin, Texas, as a matter of fact,
Mhm.
who came up. He was in Toastmasters. They have what they call the World Championship of Public Speaking. It's an annual event every August at the International Convention. This year we didn't have it because, well, you know why.
Yeah.
But we did it virtually, which is kind of hard. We had more people. Typically, we'll have about 3,500, 4,000 people. This year, we had over 6,000 people virtually online watching the international convention
Mhm.
and the international speech contest. Well, this contest starts in the clubs, and there are about 17,000 Toastmasters clubs in the world. We're in 143 countries around the world.
Okay.
And so it starts at 17,000 clubs. Somebody starts off. Well, it goes up to the next level, which pares it down to, I don't know what the number would be, 10,000 maybe. And then it goes up to the next level, which pares it down to a couple of thousand. And then it kind of finally gets up to the district level. And there are 102 districts in the world right now.
Mhm.
Some districts are in multiple countries. Over in Europe, that happens a lot. And so the district contest, well, there's 102 districts, so that tells you it comes down to 102 contestants. So we started at 17,000, comes down to 102.
Yeah.
And they pair that off. They start having what they call regional events, and there are eight regions in the world, and so that ends up having 8 finalists. The winner of each region will then go on to the international championship.
Mhm.
The World Championship of Public Speaking, 1990. Oh, his name just went right out the door. But anyway,
Yeah.
he got up to do the speech. He was introduced, and the way that they introduce somebody at those contests is very exact. They say your name, the title of your speech, and your name.
Mhm.
That's the introduction.
Yeah.
No, he was a stock market guy or none of that. No, it's just his name, title, name.
Yeah.
Well, he got his name, title, name, and he walked up on the stage and fell flat on his face, just dropped.
Wow.
And he's in front of an audience of about 2,500 at that one, but in 1990, yeah, probably 2,500, maybe 3,000 were there. But anyway, in front of an audience, and he's looking up, laying on his stomach, his chest, and looking up at the audience. And he's talking like this. And when you're in that position, it's hard to talk.
Yeah.
He's making himself heard, and he gets up and he starts a speech that way. Nobody, and everybody thought something happened. He fell. Oh my God! The audience was, and so it was quite an interesting. He got our attention.
Yeah.
And then he did something during his speech that I'd never seen before, and I've seen many times since. But he was the first to do it, and that was he had a build up to something, and I've forgotten what it was. I don't remember the speech at all anymore. But anyway, the thing is that he built up to some point, and at this point he said, and a hearty, and he closed his mouth. The
Yeah.
entire audience, everyone in that audience said, "Hi ho, Silver!"
Yeah.
They didn't have no audience had ever done that before in an international speech contest
Yeah.
or any other speech contest that I'd seen. And it was just, and I said to myself right then, that just won the contest.
Yeah.
That thing, his connection to this audience is that solid. It's so good that he did this. He's still around. He's a speech coach,
Wow.
And he's of course a professional speaker, and he goes around and does his thing. And he helps. I know him. I've known him for years, and so it's like, yeah, okay. He knows I'm Doug, and he's whatever his name is. He's my very best friend, you know.
Oh, that's understandable. It sounds like he shifted the paradigm then of speaking, where he just really had the audience in his hands, where he didn't have to say, when I say this, you say that. He just,
Right.
they knew, like
Yeah,
almost like telepathy.
they reacted,
Yeah,
and they reacted in such a way like they had no choice. They had to do that. And
yeah.
that's how genius that speech was. He set that up so the audience could not do that. It was great. So yeah, that was oh well. I'll probably right when we're done, I'll remember his name. But
Right after we're done.
yeah.
What would you say, like, if you wanted to give advice to someone who's good at speaking, maybe even, and they wanted to become great at speaking, they wanted to take it to the next level, what advice would you give someone like that? Maybe someone who's competing in a contest and they know they really have to be on their A game.
Okay.
What advice?
Yeah, my advice to them, go find a person who is already, well, two things. One, go find somebody who's already won the international championship.
Mm-hmm.
You only get to do that once. Once they become the world champion of public speaking, they're done. They are not allowed to enter a speech contest after that. They're ineligible. So it's your one time to shine. By the way, the speeches they give are not, they can't give the same speech twice.
Yeah.
That's one of the contest rules is that if you win at this level, when you go to the next level, you can't repeat any speech that you've done before in the past.
Yeah.
That's won anything. And so these are all fresh speeches. Toastmasters want you to be a good speaker. They don't want you to be really good at doing one speech. Anybody can become give a knock it out of the park speech.
Yeah.
If they practice it enough and so on. Mm-hmm. These are speeches that are brand new. I have a fellow whose name I do recall, Rod Wright is his name. He's in Hawaii. Rod's retired, but Rod was at the World Championship of Public Speaking. He was in the finals. And the night before the contests are usually on Saturday morning. And Friday night, he decided, I don't like my speech.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're getting ready to give a live speech on stage for thousands of people in the audience. And people normally would never think of scrubbing a speech. Rod did. And he came up with a whole other subject and a whole other speech, because if he wasn't using that speech, then he couldn't use that speech. Mm-hmm. So what he came up with was a speech that he called a warm boot.
Okay.
A warm boot. Now that used to be a computer term that everybody would know what that meant back in those days. This was when we had desktop computers, and over the towers usually, and we would have a tower sitting there and whatever. Well, you had to oftentimes in those days restart your computer. Something would go wrong, darn it, and you get in there and push a button. And that was a hard boot. That was restarting a computer. That was turning off the power, turning the power back on, letting it start from scratch. A warm boot was when you just could sort of reset everything.
Yeah.
And the power never went off, but it just would reset everything back to its defaults or whatever it was. So, and most computers go bong when they start, or a different chime or a different tone, but they all have that noise that they make. Yeah. And that's what warm boot brings it back. So that's what his speech was about, was restarting, starting over. And it was how appropriate he did his speech. He just thought of overnight and started over with it, and won the international contest.
Wow.
And people say, how do you do that? Well, number one, he was a good speaker to begin with. Now, advice to somebody who wants to become a better speaker. They're already good, they want to get better. One, find a world champion of public speaking, hire them. It's not free. Hire them to coach you. And they will. Anybody who's made the world championship, they know how to put together a speech and they know how to present it. And so they're worth a lot, and they don't charge a lot, but they're worth a lot. The second thing is Toastmasters will teach you how to speak. In Toastmasters, you can go to any level you want, from just being a Toastmaster member to being a professional speaker to being extraordinary, to be a Tony Robbins or a Bob. Why am I not remembering names today? Anyway, Bob Kiyosaki. And,
Oh yeah.
And he's Rich Dad Poor Dad, and Tony, of course, has got his programs. He likes to get people to walk on coals and things like that. And really, what he's about is he's wanting people to find their potential, and that's kind of what it's all about. It really comes down to what is your potential, and then how do you get it? How do you get to that level? Well, Toastmasters will teach you how to get to any level of speaking that you want. It does not teach you how to become a professional speaker, however. Toastmasters does have a program called the Accredited Speaker Program, AS. That's a big deal. You must be a, quote, professional speaker to become an AS, an accredited speaker in Toastmasters. You must show tax returns that shows income from speaking, and it must show, I forgot what it is, it's like 25% of your income or something has got to be coming from speaking.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's not something that people take lightly. And every year at the International Convention, there's 6 or 8, maybe 10 people who apply for AS, and maybe 2 or 3 of them will actually get the AS. It's not easily won. However, Toastmasters does not teach you how to become a professional speaker. It's hard work. So where do you go? You go to the NSA, National Speakers Association. NSA teaches you how to build a business in public speaking. And the first thing they'll tell you, write a book.
Okay.
Wait, that's not speaking, that's writing.
Yeah.
Write a book. You got to get your name out there.
Yeah.
And publish it. Oh yeah, write it and publish it.
Yeah.
And that'll be the first thing they want you to do, because they want you to have credentials. When you go up on stage, you better have written something, because nobody wants to listen to somebody who just talking theory. They want to hear somebody who's actually been practical about it and helping people and all that. So anyway, so NSA will teach you how to make it a business. Toastmasters will teach you the skills that you need to have to be an effective communicator.
Very good. Very good. And when it comes to Toastmasters, there's certain parts, right? Like a big important part is the evaluations of speeches. So there'll be 3 prepared speeches, and then after that, there's 3 evaluations of those speeches. What's your advice for someone who wants to evaluate a speech in a way that's tactful, that will cause a person to change without hurting their feelings?
Yes, well, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
Toastmasters is the only organization on the planet where you get feedback.
Yeah.
Nobody else, not Dale Carnegie, not anybody. They don't give you feedback. They just have you get up and give a speech, and they say, oh, that was great, good job, slap you on the back, and that was really swell.
Yeah.
Whether it was or not. And so in Toastmasters, we train people on how to become an effective evaluator. An evaluation is not critiquing, it's not picking out the things that were wrong and building on that. What they do is they're about picking off the things that are right and good, the things that will make you, if you expand them or grow them, they make you better. They make you a better, more effective communicator. So we learn that in Toastmasters. We build people up, we don't tear them down. And so we can say, we'll start off, and every evaluations have 3 parts.
Yeah.
All the evaluations in Toastmasters. The first part is what you did well. Man, you were good today. I got to tell you, you had a certain pace. In fact, it was almost a poetic rhythm going on. Your cadence in that speech was just, it was nice to hear. It was poetry, even though it wasn't a poem. But it was really well done. I really like that about your speech today. The second part is something that they need to work on.
Yeah.
And so you might say, you know, the one thing that was missing in that speech, and something you may want to work on this in the future, is, I don't know, give them an example. Is maybe vocal variety.
Yeah.
The one thing that was I was distracted actually by your monotone today. It was just a level thing. There was no excitement in it. There was no bad stuff. There was no good stuff. There was just stuff. Yeah. And it was kind of boring. And that's what happens when it's just a monotone speech. It's just drone in their ears, and they just hear it, and then they don't hear it.
Yeah. Puts you to sleep.
You know that sound.
Yeah. Oh, I know from school. I remember, being in class.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, I know. Yes, I know teachers who were there to get a paycheck.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've had professors like that. They were there for the paycheck. That's the only
Sad.
thing
Yeah,
the only reason I could see them for them to be there, because they sure weren't liking what they were doing.
yeah.
But so then that's something that they might want to build on. Okay, give them. I always say, and give them an example,
Mhm.
and say, you know, when you got to that part in the speech where he slammed the door and stomped off, well, rather than just saying he slammed the door and he stomped off, I mean, he slammed the door and he stomped off.
Yeah,
Pick up your rate, flare your nostrils a little bit, get into it, get angry. If the subject of the speech is angry at that moment, you as a presenter need to be angry at that moment and be
yeah,
able to control your anger and take anger and make it into laughter if you want to.
yeah.
So those are the things. So that's something to build on. And then the final thing is a challenge. And sometimes gesturing is a big part of speaking. Gestures are natural. We do it when we're talking to our friends.
Mhm.
We have gestures, but somehow when we get up in front of an audience, we don't know what to do with those hands. Where'd those things come from anyway? Have I had these all my life? I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
And so people will get up, and sometimes they just go crazy. We had a gal, she passed away this past year. She was Toastmaster for a long time, and she she would I used to call them, she would precede her comment with a gesture.
Mhm.
Her gesture would come before the words would come.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, if she say, well, I can count three things.
Yeah.
Well, she had her three up before she started the sentence.
Huh.
You know, she would precede her words with her gestures, I don't know how many times I talked with her about that, but she never got over it. She died with that issue, but
Really.
not because of the issue, but with that issue. And so gesturing is one thing. So one of the things that I've advised people to do, and had her do it, and it didn't work, but for everybody else it seemed to work, and that is I tell people, okay, when you give your speech, I would like you to put your hands in your pockets.
Mhm.
And if you don't have pockets, you know, if you're wearing a skirt and doesn't have pockets, stick them in your waist. Put your thumbs in the waist,
Mhm.
on your hips, not in front or anywhere else, but put them on the side on your hips.
Mhm.
And don't let them come out. Most people cannot do that.
Yeah.
At some point in their speech, they have to use their hands. They gotta start flailing or something. But
Yeah.
what it does is it makes them very, very conscious about where their hands are and what they're doing with them.
Mhm.
And when they've had that experience, it only takes once, I think. When they've had that experience of not having the hands, now it wakes them up, and they become more aware of when they're using them and how they're using them, or if they even want to use them.
Mhm.
And oh, by the way, people say, well, what should I do with my hands when I'm not gesturing? Let them be at your side.
Yeah.
Do nothing with them. Just have them down and bring them up when it's time to bring them up. You're in charge of that. No one else is.
Mhm.
Only you can determine how gesturing you want to be during a presentation.
Yeah,
And gestures really do add impact to your presentation.
for sure. It's all about controlling it though, rather than being at the whims of
Yeah.
this. Then I did this and I did that, and sometimes it's out of control.
Well, I watch the newscasters now,
Yeah.
and they've started the past maybe 2 years now, I guess. Everybody has tablets now, and so tablets,
Tablets.
iPads, right, or whatever they're called, and so they all have these tablets. Well, now if you notice when they're standing and they're doing a talk and they're maybe in front of a map or someplace, they'll have the tablet in their both hands, and they just have it held down,
Mhm.
and they don't do anything with it. They never look at it. It's just that tablet is there, and it's there to keep. I guess it's there to keep them from gesturing,
Yeah.
from getting too. I don't know. I've never been a television newscaster or anything, so I don't know about that business. But
Mhm.
I keep wondering why do they insist that their staff, their camera people, they're headhunters or they're talking heads. That's what we used to call them.
Yeah.
Why do they insist they have a tablet in their hands? I guess maybe because when they have a full body shot, or at least a upper body shot of them, they don't want their hands moving around because they're just reading. They're all just reading. They're good readers because they have the teleprompter in front of them and they just go along with that.
With what it says. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
So,
and final question about public speaking. A part of Toastmasters is impromptu speaking. We call that table topics.
right.
What advice would you want to give to someone who wants to start winning at table topics, or someone who just wants to get really great at speaking off the cuff, the opposite of a reader, if you will?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess what I've said to people about that. Number one, the reason for table topics is it's if you've ever been any place or done anything and with a crowd of people around or with just some friends or whatever, and something surprising happens, something that you were not expecting. It happens. It just happens. And everybody goes, and they react however they react. Some people might scream or whatever it is, but something will happen. Or maybe someone will say something to you that's just shocking that they would say that to you. And then you walk away, whether you're hurt or happy or whatever, you walk away, and then 2 hours or 2 days or 2 weeks later, you say, oh, that's what I should. Oh, if I could have only thought to say this to them.
Yeah.
Oh man, that would have really been a zinger. Whoa, why couldn't I think of that? Well, that's what table topics does. Is table topics, you're not told the subject before you're going to start. You suddenly your name is called and you stand up or you walk up to the lectern or you do whatever is formal is the format of that club, and then you're told what the subject is. Today you're going to be talking about 5-card hold'em poker.
Yeah.
And whether you know anything about poker, 5-card hold'em poker or not, doesn't matter. Your job is to get up there and give a 1 to 2 minute talk on your understanding or your belief or your myth that you're making up on 5-card hold'em poker. And that's it. The more often you do that, the better you're going to get at this impromptu thing. Because what that teaches you is it teaches you to think on your feet. Whether you know anything about the subject or not, you can, by the time you muster up the energy to start putting words out of your mouth, you've already got it going. It sharpens the mind so that you can respond or react to that.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to get better at that is do it more and more and more. It's like riding a bicycle.
Yeah. Awesome. And final question on public speaking. If you could just leave one tip for the audience on public speaking in general, what you've learned in Toastmasters, like the biggest lessons you've learned, what would that one tip be regarding public speaking and being an effective communicator?
I like effective communicator. I don't know that everybody wants to be a public speaker. But to be an effective communicator is huge. But what it takes to become an effective communicator, number one, it takes courage. You've got to be willing to put yourself out. It's like I look at people who are stage actresses or singers, and I watch them. I'm always in awe when I see most any of them, because, well, I should say most any of them. I don't qualify a lot of them as particularly good. Barbara Streisand is, wow. That's probably the only word I could use to describe Barbara Streisand. Wow. When we come into more modern stuff, good. See, another name I'm not getting. A country western singer right now. She's very popular. She just hosted the big country music night.
Carrie Underwood, maybe?
What?
Carrie Underwood?
No, but Carrie's a good one too. These are people who are really good at what they do and they love what they do. They're interested.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I watch any boy group or most of the young female singers that are out there today, and most of the young male singers as well. They are all about being interesting.
Yeah.
There is not a bit of anything in them that has anything to do with music particularly. They want the paycheck. And they go and they learn the skills, they do the stuff, they do what they have to do to get there, and they have good agents and things like that that get them recognized. But they're not good. But you take a Streisand, a Aretha Franklin, oh, Aretha, it's like that woman is powerful. And it's because she could not think of another thing to do in her life except sing. It's all she ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
And when you see the really good ones that come through, when they started when they were the smallest children, their parents were really surprised that that's all they seemed to want to do.
Yeah.
She comes out of Hawaii. Legendary performer. Great comedian, great singer. Anyway, same thing with her. When she was in high school in Hawaii, she was going to Radford High School. And when she was in high school, that's all she wanted to do was perform.
Yeah.
And she would do whatever she could do to be in every place she could be in and to sing on everything. And it was an obsession with her. And people thought she was nuts. Well, she's nuts all the way to the bank. She's had a tremendous career. She's my age, and so she's had a tremendous career. And Wind Beneath My Wings is one of her songs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
is that Bette Midler?
Bette Midler, that's it.
Yeah.
And she does so much, and she gives back.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. So it's all about service. So anyway, so what got me into that? What was your question? What do I leave the audience with?
Yeah, one tip to leave the audience with when it comes to being an effective communicator.
Okay.
That was
Oscar Wilde, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Yeah. If you want to be that effective communicator, be authentic. Do what you need to do to be real.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, let that word service into your life. I am a believer that every single one of us here to serve. That's our mission here, is to serve one another. And so open up to that, open up to service, open up to giving, open up to being a supporter. And this is the power of Toastmasters is we're all there. We all want everyone else in the group to win.
Yeah.
We want every other member in the group to be successful at whatever they're doing. And we try to make it fun and lively and interesting, and most importantly, we make it supportive. You walk into a Toastmasters meeting, you're going to walk out feeling better. I don't care how good you feel walking in, you're going to walk out feeling better.
Yeah. That's what kept me coming back, was the uplifting factor of it, that support.
Yeah.
That's a big part of
it's fun. We have a lot of laughs in Toastmasters meeting. Yeah. And so it's fun, and it's fun. I guess it's fun seeing people prosper.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking financial. When I see people prospering in their ability to relate, when I see their self-esteem coming up, that's a big win. When I see somebody feeling better about themselves, huge. And I like that. And that's what keeps me coming back. I keep seeing people growing and getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
And more comfortable with themselves and becoming comfortable with who they are. Not apologizing for it.
Yeah.
Just, here I am, glasses and all.
Take it or leave it. I love it.
Yeah, really.
And moving on real quick to personal development. I know you're very into personal development. It's kind of related to public speaking. One thing about you, Doug, that a lot of people who know you know is you like Hawaiian culture. You lived in Hawaii for quite a while.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, in relation to personal development, what's something that the people in mainland America could learn from people in Hawaii?
2 words. Aloha spirit. I do counseling with people. And for counseling, I do right here. This is let me see, where's the camera there? Yeah, I don't know if you can you read that out.
Hawaiian healing intentions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is a part of a process. Lomi Lomi is an ancient, I used to be a massage therapist when I was younger. And Lomi Lomi is an ancient Hawaiian massage.
Mhm.
And it's been around thousands of years. And when I was an active massage therapist in Hawaii, I never applied, never learned it, never didn't. I knew it was out there. I didn't know what it did or what it was for.
Mhm.
And I have only just in the past year, this year of the pandemic, have come across some people out of Hawaii who teach it. And this Hawaiian healing intentions things is I do soul counseling. I deal with people and they're dealing with their at the soul level, what's going on with them really. And this is it. And it's 44 cards in a book. And it talks about how life works. And so that's what I do. That comes out of ancient Hawaii. Once I started learning it, now I'm taking classes in it, and at my age, I'm thinking of launching another career. But it's powerful. It's really, really good stuff. So goes back to Hawaiian culture. The two words, the Aloha spirit. The thing that the mainland people don't have is the Aloha spirit. Hawaii it's an ancient culture. They were shifting their crops to help the soil. They do not believe that they own the land. They say the land was here before us, it'll be here after us, and it's our job to be a good caretaker. And the same thing with the fishing. They would only fish a certain amount of time in the year in certain areas so that they would not fish it out. Even though it's the ocean and there's an abundance of fish out there, they still were very mindful of nature. Mm-hmm. And so part of the Aloha spirit comes from that kind of caretaking. It has to do with how we nurture one another. It's how we respect one another. The word haole is the word that the Hawaiians use for describing. People today think that the word haole means Caucasian or white person. And it doesn't, and it never has. But that's the interpretation it's given now in the modern times. But when Captain Cook first went to the islands, that was the first white people that the Hawaiian people had ever seen. And they gave them the name haole because the word haole means shallow breath.
Wow.
And what they noticed was these white people, didn't breathe. They didn't breathe well. Hawaiians, breathing is a big deal. In Toastmasters, breathing is a big deal. We've got to learn to breathe while we're speaking so that we can control our energy, keep our mind. We don't forget stuff like names. Mm-hmm. We just breathe. And when we can do that, that's a good thing. The Hawaiian people, breathing, respecting one another, serving one another. They make sure that we say the ohana is the word that means family.
Yeah.
But in Hawaii, the family is not just your mother, father, sister, brother. The family is also, in Hawaii, we call them your cousin. Everybody calls, hey, cuz. Everybody's cousin. And we have a word that we use for people who are not related to us. We say the word is hanai. And I could say, like, I have a daughter I have a hanai daughter. She was never a daughter of mine. I didn't meet her until she worked for me way back when. She's retired now. What happened to me? She came to work I was doing real estate development back in those days, and she came to work, and we bright young girl, bright. And she had, what had she done? She graduated high school, I guess, and then she was thinking about going into the Air Force. Mm-hmm. And I said, there's somebody I want you to talk to, and come home with me for dinner. I want you to meet my wife. And my wife was a Air Force officer. Mm-hmm. And so she came home, and we had dinner, and she met Tammy, and they hit it off. They got off, and we between me, between me with her at work and then Tammy talking to her in the evening for singer, she started becoming a fixture. She actually moved into the house. She moved in with us. She became an I daughter. And then she went to University of Hawaii. She went there and she got into the ROTC, and she became the commandant of the ROTC at the University of Hawaii. So she graduated. She was the woman in charge. And then she went on to join the Air Force as a commissioned officer. And she spent, I don't know what, she didn't spend, I think maybe 5 or 6 years in the Air Force, and then met some guy and got married. Oh, yeah. And they live up, in fact, they live in Salt Spring Island.
Yeah.
You know that's where James lives.
Yeah, up in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just out of BC, Vancouver, BC. So anyway, and I call her Matt, by the way. So we have this thing called Hanai, and so the whole family, the children, because the Hawaiians back in the good old days, before the Americans got involved, everybody worked. The men would go either fishing or farming, and the women would tend to the village, would do whatever had to be done in the village, and it was the ohana, the whole town or the village or whatever you want to call it, the entire community was the ohana, and they would raise the children. The ohana raised the children. If a child was out of line, anybody in town could grab him, and spank him across the butt, because that's what they did in those days. And yeah, and it was all that. Everybody knew everybody, and everybody knew everybody's business, and it was fine. And they respected one another, and yeah. Anyway, so that's where the Aloha spirit comes from, is this respect for one another and this closeness, and we are in this togetherness. And that spirit is still very much alive in Hawaii today, and I would love to see it. Well, I'd love to see it spread elsewhere, and so I'm doing that. I've taken on this healing course, and I've taken on some clients, and it seems to be working. At least my clients tell me it is. So unless they're lying.
That's good. Awesome. Just a few more questions. I want to be respectful of your time and let you go. But one question I have is, I know nowadays, like, especially when I'm talking to younger people, a lot of people say they're anxious. They're very worried about everything. What advice would you give to people who suffer from anxiety or who feel anxious a lot?
Stop being afraid.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's all fear. Everybody's afraid of everything. In life is what it is. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes I say, understanding is the booby price. See, understanding things. Now, if you're an engineer, if you're a civil engineer, you need to understand how buildings are built.
Yeah. Because
that's what you do. So understanding is important. If you're an architect, if you're a doctor, you have to understand, or you're a massage therapist, you have to understand what the human, how it works, and how it functions, and how it functions well, and also what it looks like when it's not functioning well. Yeah. And so that's where understanding is important. But in life, understanding is the booby prize. And I say this about that. I say, just get it. When you see a person behaving in a way, and I think psychiatrists are a waste of time, personally, mm-hmm. and because they're trying to understand the human mind. There's nothing to understand about that. Just get it, and allow it to be. And so the things about that are this: we spend a lot of time trying to understand stuff, and when we can't understand it, or can't get a feeling like we are in charge of it, or over it, then we become anxious. We're anxious because we don't know. We don't know why that is, or what that is, or how that is. It just is, and I can't control it. And I get angry when I can't control things, because I want to control it, even though I'm not a controller. Mm-hmm. We still want to do that. We want to have that knowledge that we're worthwhile. And as long as we're not feeling worthwhile, as long as we're not feeling in charge, we're going to be angst. We're going to be anxious. We're going to be unsettled. And so stop trying to figure stuff out. Allow things to be just the way they are and just the way they are not. And that's my other sort of mantra. Everyone is perfect, exactly the way they are and exactly the way they are not. That's what perfection is. And so when we can allow our own imperfections in our perfection as part of our perfection,
yeah,
that's when we can begin to get good. That's when we can begin to grow. That's when we can begin to really relish life. That's when we can begin to express joy in our lives.
yeah,
I don't know a lot of people going around feeling joy.
yeah,
Or bliss. Deepak Chopra says, find your bliss.
Mhm.
And that's what he means, is find that point at which you're really happy with yourself.
Mhm. Wow.
You can't love another until you can love yourself.
Yeah.
And so, and that's right back to the Aloha spirit, is when you've got that spirit within you, it shines, it comes out, and people get it. When people are around you, they find that there's something about you that they like, because, and really what it is you're giving them respect. You're allowing them to be who they are, whether that's, somebody who's a Scrooge, or somebody who's is a very huge benefactor, someone who's giving a lot, giving, good old what's his name, who gives away all this money. In fact, they've got the club, Bill Gates and anyway, a bunch of people have, the billionaires, they have a club that says you give away half of your money or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so, just do that. Do good in the world.
Very good.
Yeah.
I like it.
And the way you do good in the world, you should do good yourself. You do good within you.
Yeah.
And that's all the world needs, is people who are doing their best to be the best that they can be.
Yeah. Like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. And we said we would do this in an hour. So I'm seeing here we have about 5 minutes. So I wanted to ask you, final question here. We can talk about entrepreneurship later if you'd like to. We don't have to, it's up to you. And but not, it doesn't have to be related to these two things, but it can be. But what is one important message you want to leave our audience with related to anything? If you could just say one important message.
Two things.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be your best, you've got to do your best. And the way you do that is, number one, you take Einstein's words.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, we never learn less, we only learn more. And when I use that phrase, that quote, I like to think of that as, learn what you can. Keep taking on challenges. Keep challenging yourself to learn something new and different ways of thinking about things. Not to get away from trying to understand stuff, but when you expose yourself to more and different cultures, more and different ways of thinking and ways of doing things, you grow. And so you grow internally, which is, I think, so vitally important. And then back to Oscar Wilde, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. And then you've taken what you learned and you do something good with it. I tripped across the Lomi stuff a while ago, and I'm going forth. I'm taking classes. I'm getting all the learning I can get about that. And in probably another year, maybe two, I'll actually get into the hands-on portion of that. But right now I'm just working on the spiritual side.
Yeah.
And so, you got to keep going. If you stop, well, that's when they put you over at Port Sam over there.
Yeah.
Or in some other place.
Yeah. That's when it's over.
So
when you stop learning.
That's when you're tired. When your body, when you use your body up, that's when you go someplace else.
Yeah.
And so, so that's what I want to leave them with, is to keep learning and keep being yourself. Be authentic. Your authentic self. Not somebody who I was a long time ago wanted to be like this other guy.
Yeah. Just who you
I
are.
really wanted to be like him. No. See, I guess that in those days, I wasn't happy being like me.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm happy being me.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's amazing. I love that message. And want to thank you, Doug, for joining me today for my first scheduled live stream. I'm going to confirm that it's recording. It's recording. We did it. Thank you for doing it the second time too. It's
Oh.
amazing. I learned some lessons about failure from this, which are good, and not beating yourself up too much. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, thank you so much. It's great to talk to you. I was talking with Doug Kelly about personal development, being an effective communicator. And my final message is comment below with your favorite lesson that you heard from this. It's live if you're rewatching this. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want more amazing interviews. I have like a month's worth of interviews going forward. So some great stuff to look forward to.
Good.
And have an amazing day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me stop streaming. Very good. So